Oh, but one of the things that was really clear from the moment that we started Mothers Against Greg Abbott was that I was very good about telling everybody, like, we're not going to win unless we pull our money together, and we're not going to win unless we all get in line. And after a while, in the beginning, no one trusted me, nobody. But then after a while, people did start to trust me, and I really feel like hopefully I brought some results to Texas, and we were able to make a difference here across the state, and we are able to organize on a different level. So now we have now been an organization now for 4 years. And this past year, when we lost bigly in 24 last year, when we lost big last year, a lot of people were talking about how we don't have training, we don't have this, we don't have that. So I just sort of meditated on this idea in the back of my head for a few weeks. Then I got really sick in the beginning of this year, and I decided that I needed a vacation because I hadn't had one in 3 years. So I went with my daughter, and we went to Paris, and we had a fantastic time. And while we were in Paris, we went to the Shakespeare and Company bookstore, which is really famous and just this awesome, amazing place. But they have a cafe next door, and at their cafe next door, they have this piece of paper at their cafe next door, next to the trays. So when you pick up your coffee, you just pick up this piece of paper, and they really want you to talk to other people at that cafe. And it is called a kilometer zero questionnaire, and it has all of these questions. So you could, if you're sitting next to somebody you don't know, you could ask one another questions. And that got me thinking about the problem that we have in Texas is voting apathy. So with voting apathy, it's hard to know what to do and how to conquer voting apathy because it is not Texas nice to talk about politics. So because of this questionnaire, a lot of things happened. One of the things that happened because of this questionnaire and because there was this need for bringing us together, there's going to be a two-part series to this, but this is part one. Um, one of the things that came from this was this rice summit. And so I have a whiteboard that is in my living room because I have a very small house, but it has a very open floor plan. And and so in my living room, I have this whiteboard, and I would walk by it every day. And every time I had an idea of a great training panel or something, I would write it on the whiteboard. Every time I had a conversation with someone, like Andy, I had a conversation with Andy, and he said, "Oh, I'm traveling to, this state. I'm going to give this presentation on AI." And I was like, "You do that?" And he said, "Yeah." So then I said, "Well, you need to come and do that in Texas." So that's how Andy got involved in this project. And then this spring, I was sitting at a table in DC, in Washington, DC, and I was sitting at a table and I was brainstorming panel ideas for this conference. And as I was brainstorming panel ideas for this conference, the next speaker was Britt. So that is how Britt got onto this panel. And Britt she's an AI expert. And also, I found out at Netroots, I found out that she lives in Round Rock. And I was like, well, how can I not have her on this panel? Because Round Rock is like just right up the street. So that is kind of how a lot of this stuff came to play. And so I just wanted to kind of tell you because th- some things are not by chance, they're by fate. And so I really felt like this is one of those things that is by fate and it's been building for a really long time. And when I say that it's my dream to like have you all in a room, that's what I'm talking about. Sometimes dreams they take time, and it takes months and it takes 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there, but then it all kind of comes together. So I am now going to have the pleasure of introducing our next panelists. So, our next panelists are going to talk about what do you need to know about AI and its role in politics in 2026, because 2026 is predicted to be the AI election. Okay, so let's start. Andrew Cates is the owner of Cates Legal Group, where he advises candidates, PACs, and nonprofits on election and campaign law. He's the author of Texas Ethics Laws Annotated, and it's now in its 8th edition, and one fewer than 20 attorneys in the U.S. certified legislative campaign law. He's okay. I messed that one up, but I think we get it. Okay, so a frequent speaker and a media contributor, he's also helped lead the creation of the nation's first legal specialization in this field. He lives in San Antonio with his wife and son. Thank you, Andrew, for being here. Next is Britt Bischoff. Britt is an intervention strategist and researcher who studies influence and builds systems to protect truth and combat disinformation. She has exposed state backed propaganda campaigns, trained major national campaigns, and designed frameworks and playbooks for the abortion ballot initiatives in 2024, and developed AI tools to detect emerging threats. Her research focuses on how extremists weaponize digital environments to target vulnerable populations. Can you please join me in welcoming Andrew and Britt?
Hello. Better. Thank you, Nancy, for having us. This came together beautifully, and I'm honored to be part of this. So thank you very much. Do you want to talk about?
No.
Let's contextualize the moment.
So really quickly, sorry, Nancy kind of talked about how this came to be with me. Nancy and Mother Ginscrag Abbott are one of my legal clients, and I did tell her that I have been talking about AI, but I didn't tell her that I'm a real freaking bummer when I do so. So I apologize in advance. I do not have high esteem for AI in elections, and I will let you know it here in a second.
There's a lot going on. We kind of play good cop, bad cop a little bit. So let's start talking about grounding down in the moment. What does this actually mean? How are campaigns actually using AI in this moment? Where are we at? What is predicted? So AI has advanced very rapidly in the last 2 years alone, in the last 2 months alone. It's kind of hard to keep up, to be honest. Where we're at right now and what our trajectory is for 2026 is that AI is expected to be a fully integrated member of campaign staff. A lot of really successful or how successful practitioners and strategies are using AI right now is as that invisible member of their team. Through like generative AI, through generating content or media or scripts or video imagery. It's also very good at analyzing. I don't know if anybody's been on GPT-5 recently, but it's surprisingly good. I have a kind of love and hate relationship with ChatGPT right now. I've kind of moved away from ChatGPT more for like privacy things and securing data, but this guy can probably tell you a little bit more that I can't. Where AI is, I think I'm skipping ahead, but where how campaigns are actually using it at the moment is also through media production. So video, imagery. We talked about analysis, research. It's gotten incredibly good at research and synthesizing data. For example, I use it in my audits. So I have sometimes my audits, my notes are at least like 100 pages long. It's just nice to have some synthesis there and to summarize and kind of make sense of things and to repeat back to you. And I say this with caution, doing it very securely from a secure environment. So analysis, good at analysis. The through line with how campaigns are using it currently is efficiency. We're all bootstrapped. Campaigns are starting to feel the pressure too. I mean, the right is more aggressively using AI in a lot of ways, disinformation being one. So even the most hesitant campaign managers that I know are actually starting to adopt AI, and doing so with some caution, and it's rightly so. Where AI is currently headed in the 2026 trajectory is first and foremost multimodal interconnected AI. So meaning all of these disparate processes that we have in our work and in the platforms and programs that we use through text, through video, through databases, even that all being streamlined and connected together to synthesize that data, but then also breaking down your individual processes to make it easier for task completion and task mastery. So moving away from the single shot type of prompting. So in one instance of ChatGPT, I'm sorry if this moves away and you can't hear me. I'm a hand talker. So moving away from the single shot instances and more into the multimodal, meaning agentic AI. So having more of like the breaking it down into different processes and experiences. An example is how I've been able to develop scalable tools through breaking down landscape analysis and competitive analysis into easier task related. So you're not muddying the waters of your foundation, but you're building off of the different processes through agentic AI. This just means automation and making it easier. It's also better analysis for those that use it for analysis. This the second one builds off of that, and it gets a little scary from here. The hyper personalization of AI, data aggregation, and using things like voter targeting data or voter file data with social listening type data for hyper micro targeting. So it's kind of exciting that exists, but also very scary.
I was so sure I was going to just let you go on this for forever.
Go ahead.
And stay out of it because y'all, I don't know shit about AI. I just know elections and I know how AI is impacting elections, but I have seen where with the hyper personalization where I mean they can use AI to not just know that you're a Democrat that's voted in the last 5 elections Democrat and you live in this area. And so we're going to, like I live in San Antonio. So like, we're going to just hit you with a whole bunch of San Antonio generally related election stuff. And we know that we've kind of got you there. No, I mean, it knows that I searched for this thing at this point in time and it can not only pinpoint a specific question or ad to me generally, but talk about the things that it overheard on my damn phone, which I guarantee you is listening. Talking out somewhere, just talking to somebody, and it'll hit me with an ad within 2 minutes of, oh, hey, I heard you were talking about a mattress. Well, blah, blah, blah. It's like, dude, how? How? And it's going to get
Yeah.
better and a lot faster at it. And like individualized, hey, I heard you talking about this. It's
So
crazy.
if anybody's familiar with the target ads from this like 20 years ago, even the target ads that knew women were pregnant even before they did, based on their purchasing behavior, this is that, but on steroids. It's kind of scary, but also from the digital background, really kind of cool at the same time, but using guardrails. The third one, I'm really excited about this, but practitioner driven, meaning it's expected that the AI solutions that are coming forth now, the big adopters and the innovators moving forward will be the people who are closest to the problems. So the people who are the practitioners, the strategists, the people who are actually facing the everyday problems and need, solutions in their work. Those are the people who have, they have the ideas for innovation moving forward. And I think we want to talk about best practices just briefly, and then we can get into some scary things. So just some quick best practices. I'm going to keep it to 3. First and foremost, don't upload your data into ChatGPT because of privacy and security concerns. So if there's something that you want to protect, don't put it in ChatGPT because they have access to your data and information. Also, if you don't want it leaked into the public or if you don't want anybody to see it, protect it. Third is also don't upload disinformation into ChatGPT to analyze because that kind of defeats the purpose of it's basically you're training the AI on the very thing that you're trying to fight. People involved in intervention strategies, we take special precautions to label that data to make sure that we can train AI on what disinformation looks like. So that it's not included in training data and we can suppress and minimize it as much as we possibly can. The third is content and AI slop is a real thing. I would recommend not using ChatGPT to initiate content generation. Use it as a refinement or to polish your content. AI doesn't know what it doesn't know. It is trained largely on content that's available on the internet. And a lot of that content can be problematic. Also, make sure you're checking your citations and the sources within those answers, even when you're doing your research. There's been, sorry, I'm moving kind of fast. There's been a research study that was actually released in the last week that the answers that you're finding in ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, and AI models during research, about a third of those contain misinformation, or they're irrelevant to that actual result. So make sure that you are using critical thinking, that you're checking, and that you are not just taking it at face value. Um,
Yeah, and on the don't upload anything that you want private into ChatGPT. A very quick story: friend of a friend um, created a liquor company, and they were using ChatGPT and their image creation tools inside ChatGPT to uh, create a logo and a bottle label. And I mean, no shit. Like a week later, somebody reached out to them and said, "Hey, I was doing some image creation, whatever, on ChatGPT, and I'm pretty sure this is your bottle label that GPT kicked back to me as an idea of something." So they take and they use everything that you create in GPT and they push it back out there to other people. So if it's something that you want private, copyrighted, trademarked, anything like that, it should not go through that at all because it will be free use from then on.
what keeps you up at night?
Yeah, yeah. What keeps me up at night? All right, buckle up.
Personally, disinformation always, because that's just what I'm focused on all the time, and also how people are consuming that information. Um, Most people, there is growing trust and reliance on Google search and AI, even on when people are looking for information in just regular everyday life. Most people don't actually click into sources or resources, and they take those summaries at face value and they believe it to be the truth. And that's a scary percent of how many people actually truly trust web search and AI. So we'll talk about that a little bit later, but go ahead.
Yeah. So, the potential bad uses and effect on democracy as a whole of AI is pretty obvious. I mean, we've seen already, foreign actors and domestic actors blasting messages out with false information right before an election to try and swing the election. It's happened. Let's say it's happened here. It probably has happened here. It's definitely happened. It's been documented in other countries, Slovakia, stuff like that, Argentina, I think. But the liar's dividend is a concept that was coined in randomly in a law review article that I found when doing research on this at some point by a guy named Bobby Chesney, who is now since then has become the dean of the UT Law School. So I guess he knows what he's talking about. It's the concept that the proliferation of dis and misinformation out there allows political or bad actors to capitalize on voters' increasing distrust, resulting in voters discounting even true information as false that they see online. Um, the ultimate goal of bad actors isn't to specifically deceive on one piece of information or on one campaign to tank one campaign or anything like that. The goal of disinformation overall is to erode the overall trust in the system so that anything that you see online could be either true or false depending on your perspective. It's essentially the Schrodinger's cat of political communication. If bad actors erode our trust in the system far enough, every statement is both true and false at the same time because we allowed objective truths to be drowned out by falsehoods overall. It all just becomes noise, and we stop believing anything anyone says. So you can say anything in a political ad you want because it's really just going to depend on who is seeing it and how they feel. So um, let me get to some examples. Okay, so this is from an article on The Verge. It's a tech website. And the writer, named Sarah Zhang, took a look at, and this is fairly dated at this point, a year or two old. Google Pixel came out with a photo feature called Reimagine. And I think a lot of phones have this now, where you can change up images. The tool allows you to totally redesign a photo you've taken to add in new elements or remove elements you didn't want in them. The advertised purpose being that you can remove photo bombers or add in the cameraman who wasn't able to run around and get in the photo or anything like that. But you can also do some Black Hawk Down shit with a regular photo of a stream. She noted the issue with this kind of photo manipulation overall is that everyone alive right now grew up in an era where a photograph was by default a representation of the truth. Digital photo manipulation, or more recently, deep fakes, these were potential deceptions to take into account, but they were outliers in the realm of possibility. Fake was the exception and not the rule. As, as a journalist, writer, her take on this was, we're fucked. 2 words, we're fucked. And here's, I don't need to give you huge examples of this, but this is, from Kentucky's 2018 gubernatorial election. A Twitter user posted about shredding a box of Republican ballots. The claim was widely circulated around and contributed to mistrust in that election's results. At the time, at least, 2018, generative AI wasn't up and running yet. And so it wasn't accompanied by any doctored images or anything like that. Ultimately, it had limited impact as a result. But today, generative AI is far more capable. On the left, this is the quality of an image created using an early 2021 model, one of the earliest generative AI available. On the right is a model from late 2023. That's still 2 years ago. And so, I mean, look at the left. Like the left, his right hand is what, turning into packing peanuts. His left hand is like 4th-degree burns, and is emaciated away. But and then 2 years later, that's a pretty real looking image, and that's still fake, and that's still from 2 years ago. So it's only getting better or worse, I guess, depending on your situation here. And anybody know who said this? The son of a bitch who made it in the first place. So I'll move on from that.
All right. So where I come in isn't necessarily in the deep fakes itself. Oh, by the way, everybody is affected by deep fakes. I know researchers, everybody was. Does anybody remember the JD Vance audio where that was a deep fake, is a deep fake audio? It's becoming very, very real and it's getting really hard to detect. There are some companies that are coming out with synthetic media analysis to better detect deep fakes. I say this, just don't feel bad. Everybody falls for it, even a lot of people who are experts in this. And there are some solutions that are starting to come forward. But the fact is, what concerns me the most is when people, after they see these types of images, what do they do next? Do they believe it? There is actually a model called my gosh, I'm losing words all of a sudden. The interest stimulation effect. Oh, thank you. It's when somebody sees a piece of media or they see a new concept or they have a conversation with somebody and um, there's a new idea that's sparked. This then creates the curiosity to then go seek it out, to figure out what is true, what is false, what else is out there. And this is basically the basis for the exposure trigger framework. So people they're naturally curious. This is based off of that Stanford study that coined the interest stimulation effect. So this is what we see in search and AI. And search and AI are actively and aggressively being targeted by the right, by bad actors on biased information. And to walk you through this just briefly, while people are doing their media literacy and their fact checks, they are heavily, this is also a persuasion moment for a lot of people. So, about a third of both search and AI answers now contain mis and disinformation. What's scary, there was a report that came out from, I think, Nature a couple of years ago that shows that when people are doing their media literacy and they click on those results that are actually misinformation, they're 20% more likely to believe that it's true. So while people are doing their media literacy and their fact checking, they're also being targeted with mis and disinformation. And right now, it's not as obvious as like blatant lies or, the typical mis and disinformation that we assume, right? It's subtle. There's a lot of malinformation where truths are actually twisted and there's some kernel of truth. That is what really thrives in the search and AI landscape at the moment. So they're also more likely to believe, again, because most people don't click through into those citations or sources, and they believe that what they see at the top and in those summaries is the truth. Next. Yeah. This is just an example of a snapshot from DEI related AI prompts across all major AI platforms. And you'll notice that Heritage Foundation, the White House, Greg Abbott, the state of Texas official website are all starting to rise higher and higher. They're targeting these terms that involve DEI and women. What's problematic about this is that the majority, about 70% of the prompts in this analysis, in most AI results and summaries include sort of problematic training material. So open-ended sources like Wikipedia, Reddit, YouTube, LinkedIn, and then right up there you have got the White House, executive orders and press releases, followed by Heritage Foundation, followed by some other things as well. So 70% of those queries were trained on somewhat problematic sources, and things like Wikipedia, YouTube, Reddit, they overwhelmingly lean toward disinformation and right-wing bias. Okay, so I don't mean to scare the pants off of you. I say this all because it's important for us to be aware of this in this moment, because I believe that we all have a responsibility to sort of step up and do what we can do to shape and train AI and to combat that kind of stuff. So that way those sources don't get to define the narrative. I'm going to show you how we've done that in the past. Let's go to the next. Oh, this is just a real quick example of, I think this is in Florida last year, the weaponization of fact checks. So this is kind of what it looks like when you're doing your fact check and there's a flood of information. So when they flood the zone, this is how sometimes it comes across in search results. Sometimes, like what we found in Florida, there was a wall of search results and incorrect data that was being trained by Florida County election supervisors with outdated 2018 Amendment 4 information. That was kind of suppressing the 2024 Amendment 4. Anyways, it's a whole thing. Let's go to the next one. I want to give you the good news up front that it is possible to actually do something about this. And this is data from this is data from my work. The top right is not mine. That's actually from Harvard Kennedy School, from an analysis that aligns with some of these results. What this is showing you is that when people have access to this information, fact-based information, and you can push down and suppress misinformation, you can cut its effect in half. And all of this, it's all trained on a lot of open source content. There is the power in community-led interventions here with content. Okay, so let's get into the AI of it. Okay, so this is an example from, I talk a lot of my work is multimodal. This is one example of how AI was used in its role in countering disinformation in the Ohio 2023 and issue 1. That was the abortion ballot initiative in 2023. I use it as a deep listening and narrative analysis tool. So there was widespread confusion and a lot of disinformation, misinformation just flowing. Our goal was really to understand where it was coming from and how voters were feeling, what they were talking about, because we needed to break through the noise, really. Unfortunately, there's also a flood the zone type of moment from the opposition. So I actually had my own full-time job as leading a department for a national organization. I didn't have time to do, a regular like competitive analysis to dig through all of this. We didn't have time. The campaign was, or the election was several weeks away, so we didn't have time to do the normal processes of competitive analysis. So I built an AI tool to help me scrape essentially social media content and comments, our opposition content, so we can understand with granularity what voters were facing, what their questions were, what their fears were, what their concerns were, how they were repeating disinformation. And I mapped that back to the opposition and what they were doing. So we found content on Meta and on YouTube and scraped and analyzed all of it. We got a surround sound picture of the entire landscape, what voters were saying, what the opposition was saying, and how that was seeding these narratives. So that way we can have a truly effective program to cut through that noise and find kind of the cracks in their foundation so that we could be more effective. with that work, also discovered state-based disinformation high up there in search, and we were able to initiate a rapid response and a volunteer program to essentially help us to get that taken down. And we eliminated exposure for at least, this is kind of a conservative amount, but at least 500,000 voters. So we reduced the visibility of it. Okay, let's go to the next. This is from Florida Amendment 4. So we use it as a preemptive warning system. Um, Again, the opposition is flooding the zone. We saw the wall of results. There were about 70 plus, this is also a conservative amount of opposition that were heavily targeting Amendment 4, trying to suppress out fact based information and making it just overwhelming for voters and confusing. Um, so they were also throwing every possible hurdle they could with the ballot initiative to confuse voters, to claim that they were on the yes or on that the pro-choice was on the no side. So they were trying to trick and confuse and overwhelm voters. So again, built off of the previous system to do a kind of a surround sound analysis of what was in the environment, what were voters saying, but really looking at what were the narratives, how was this all coming together from the aligned forces. This led us back to state-based disinformation with county supervisors and the Department of Health and Florida governor. The good news is we were able to actually kind of build out preemptive systems, and we could catch it early. So we caught it early. The minute that we had an opposition ad roll out, we knew what they were saying, how they were saying, we knew the ins and out of their strategy, how it was aligned. So that way we knew the scale to which we needed to build a program and what ads could and should say in order to get in front of voters and to kind of like squeeze through those cracks. And it was successful. We did walk away with 57% of the vote. We didn't clear the 60% supermajority threshold, but that's just voter disenfranchisement.
Anything about that?
So I showed this graph. It's probably not the best thing to show. There's so many more case studies I would love to be able to show, but this just shows how we rode that way. We were ahead of that trend because we knew it was coming. We knew what they were going to say and how voters would turn. Again, following that exposure trigger model, we knew what they were going to say, and so we made sure that the minute that those opposition dropped those ads, that we had content to then ride out that wave and to meet people where they were and to give them access to information instead. Ooh. Amendment 79 in Colorado. This is two concepts up front is the knowledge gap and the data void, right? This is the epitome of knowledge gaps and data voids kind of converging. And when the two meet, knowledge gaps is when individuals, voters, they don't have a whole lot of information about a subject. There's little known, and then the data voids is where there's not a lot of content or there's an imbalance of content in the ecosystem. So when they're looking for information, there's not anything there. When those two converge, it is a very dangerous situation, and this is where disinformation thrives. So the best example I can give you is breaking news moments, where there's not a lot of information, there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, there's a lot of emotions happening, and there's a little information. Believe me when I tell you that disinformation actors, opposition forces, they work in advance to set up the narratives that they want to steer people towards, specifically for those moments. So we caught this in Colorado, and we proactively filled out the content. We had a surround sound system with coalition partners. We made sure that there was fact-based information to catch voters when they needed it, and we drowned out the disinformation. It was great. All right, let's move on to the next one. I'm trying to move fast because I want to make sure we've got time for everything and questions. This is probably one of not my favorite, but I use it as a simulation lab. So the thing with disinformation is when you do message testing, this isn't message testing, by the way, but when you do any sort of testing with real voters, you run the risk of repeating the narrative, which makes it then more believable. And we wanted to basically reduce that. And we also didn't want to train AI models on, these false narratives. So we use AI as a simulation lab. If anybody remembers the RBG pack ads that Elon Musk backed last year, this is what that analyzed. So we analyzed basically the impact that those ads had on issue salience, abortion issue salience, and how it diverted attention from abortion and kind of led voters to believe that um, abortion would be safe, and it's not really an issue to be concerned with this election. It actually worked. Um, and post-election analysis confirmed that this data, that our analysis was correct, our prediction. So we used it to predict basically what voters were exposed to. Did they believe this? Were they more likely to believe this? Um, should also tell you that we analyzed who the targeted audiences likely were, and broke it down in that way. So we simulated audiences. We ran some message testing based on whether or not they believe this message. Did they believe the claim? What were they likely to do afterward? And it the results showed that people, specifically suburban women and women who received their news from social media, were more likely to um, reduce their concern about abortion as a voting issue, and instead um, increase the concern about the economy. Um, and then they were also more likely to search more information. And again, in this case, there legitimately was a stacked search deck where RBG PAC and Trump and right wing aligned organizations had targeted those very terms that people were searching for in AI and in web search. So having this information allows us to get ahead of it and to kind of take to steer more rapid response campaigns very quickly. Okay, if anybody remembers the Trump Rogan podcast, AI analysis saved me 3 hours from having to listen to that man's voice. And not only did it analyze the entire video at length, dissecting essentially everything that he was saying, the nuance, the tone, the sentiment, everything that's being said, so that way we can map that narrative back to how people were researching on election fraud claims that Trump was inserting in those interviews, but also the comments. And this is the story that I think really that's worth highlighting here: the comments. People are kind of their truest selves in the comments, but also bots. So at the time, there were about 500,000 comments that we analyzed. And through analyzing the comments, we detected what looked to be inauthentic behavior. So bots, a lot of them talk about 40% referenced censorship and other, bot related activities and signals. We caught that before the mainstream media had actually published that in the headlines. Having this type of knowledge really helps you to get ahead of that and to, or arrange strategies and digital campaigns to thwart and to um, suppress what you can. Again, this is also another case where they had the perfect search results and summaries waiting for people when they were searching for things like YouTube censorship. All right. Yep. Go ahead.
Time for me to bum y'all out again. Okay, so um, so that was interesting for me. I mean, we only met like an hour ago, 2 hours ago, and we had kind of sort of gone back and forth a little bit on what we were going to talk about. But I've never seen any of those slides or heard any of that before. So it is interesting to see at least how, um, because I focus on so much on the ads themselves and how they can spoof your voice or spoof your face, your likeness, all that, and make it look bad. But like, and obviously like crowd size apparently. Um, um, but it's interesting to kind of have the digitized collective brain of AI in the world to be kind of your own personal social psychologist, and to figure out how people are thinking in elections. I hadn't thought about that before, but that's equally terrifying. So great. Um, so I'm going to move on kind of to the regulation piece of how this is being regulated in the U.S. and in Texas. Um, Congress has put some stuff forward. The president has said he wants to help build AI and build it all in the U.S. and all that. Um, but this quote is from a former Federal Election Commission attorney, about AI and about AI regulation. Um, they're not coming to save us. The federal government is not going to act quickly enough to supersede what all the states are doing already because they have failed to act. In fact, the FCC and the FEC are still currently in a pissing match over who has the regulatory authority to even do anything about it in the first place. The FCC sure tried really hard when that fake Biden call up in Connecticut or wherever up northeast during the primaries. The FCC tried to come in and find that person, who's, shocker, somebody from Texas, like $1 million or something like that. And the FEC stepped in and said, no, 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 thanks for coming, pat on the head. You don't regulate elections. We do. Thank you very much. And then they also went around and said, well, we're gonna do some rules, and then came back and said, oh yeah, no, never mind. Actually, our rules are good. They cover everything with AI already, so don't worry about it. We're all good to go. Nothing to see here. So they're not doing a goddamn thing. Okay, I'll tell you that right now. The
Except
states are.
executive orders.
Yeah, except executive orders that are definitely the rule of law. Okay, so this is what states were doing around deepfakes and synthetic media as of April 24th of last year. State legislatures have introduced as many as 50 AI bills a week in 2024 alone, most of which regulate synthetic media. They'll always kind of follow the same pattern. Let's create a subgroup to commission a study to think about possibly doing anything in the future. And then they'll try to define what AI is, and they'll all bitch and moan about the definition for 10 years. And then they'll go after some of the salacious stuff, which is, the deepfake nudes and the stuff that kids have been doing in high schools and stuff like that. That's really, really, really gross. They'll knock all that out, and then someday they'll get to how it's going to impact elections. They'll only really get to the election piece if one of them gets popped, and they get really pissy about it, and then they go into session and act all rah, rah, rah about it. Tried to do that this session with Dade Phelan. Dade Phelan pulled some bills up that I halfway wrote, and he got skewered for it. My God, if anybody saw that, Dade Phelan got his ass kicked on that, and it was a bummer because I was helping him try to write it because I've been trying to kind of canary in the coal mine on this for a little while. I'll show you in a little while why Texas law does not cut it for our elections here, but it really doesn't. So this is April 24th of 24. This is as of July 4th of this year. So I'm going to try to go back and forth. You kind of see a whole lot of states are getting in on it. Texas is technically currently still one of the stronger states, and they put that in place in 2019 before any of this stuff really even came about. But it's still not good enough for a couple of reasons. And one of the other issues to consider is that lawmakers and legislative staff are using AI to write legislation themselves. It is becoming more and more prevalent by lobbyists and lawmakers alike. In Texas, we have an entire agency of lawyers dedicated to writing legislation. Lawmakers send ideas or fully formed drafts to the agency to write up in the correct way with all of the heretofores and be it enacteds and all that flowery stuff. And they kick it back out to file. The issue is this: in Texas, we usually end up with about 6,000 to 7,000 bills that get filed, and we end up passing about 20% of those. And that's by design. That's the way that the legislature is built. They build in bottlenecks in committees and in calendars and all that kind of stuff on purpose to make sure we don't pass 7,000 damn new laws every year. This year, because of ChatGPT making it so easy to write bills on your own, the agency anticipated and ended up with over 20,000 drafts for bills. More than double the normal amount. So what do you think happens then? They get overloaded, they make mistakes, bills die for procedural reasons. That's the other half of what I do for a living, is I kill bills at the Capitol for stupid procedural reasons. It's so petty and it's so much fun. And then, like, maybe some hallucinated language gets into those bills and makes it through, and nobody notices. Then what the hell do we do? Take it to court, I guess. I mean, and we end up with a court battle, and the laws and whatever. It doesn't matter. So we had one bill passed this time, one that made any difference, on AI. And it establishes a regulatory sandbox program. This is the best sandbox stupid background I could find. Administered by the Texas Department of Information Resources, which kind of manages the state's computer system overall and everything. It allows approved participants to test AI systems without obtaining like licenses or anything like that. You can create a sandbox and go in there and test all of your AI stuff before it goes public, and it's air gapped off from the internet. You're not gonna screw anything up if you do it. Whatever. It creates a Texas Artificial Intelligence Council to oversee ethical AI development, and a lot of this bill was specifically designed for state agencies and kind of put guardrails around state agencies when they're going to start employing AI and deploying it. Running AI on Medicaid and whatever. In another stroke of bad luck, and that pun is entirely intended, the author of this bill will now be leaving the Capitol soon due to some indiscretions. He was the only person in the Capitol that knew anything about computers whatsoever. And now he's gone, so we've got nobody left, unless somebody comes in who is a data tech or anything. I mean, a software engineer or something. But he was the only person that knew anything at all about the internet and computers. There are still legislators in there that don't have email addresses and just dictate to their secretaries. It's bonkers. So I wouldn't expect any good updates on AI anytime soon, because the one guy that we had got run out of town. Okay, so the next two slides are actually, I think, the last. This is what Texas law is currently. The Texas Ethics Commission kind of takes the same tack that the Federal Election Commission does, that the laws that we have on the books are probably good enough to encompass most of the AI stuff that we're going to come across. 255.004, that's the election code. Usually 255 is kind of the political advertising kind of section of the election code. This is true source of the communication. If you put something out there, basically, if you put something out there and you're not truthful about where the source of that communication came from, you're saying it came from somewhere else or misrepresenting the identity of who it came from, that's going to get you in trouble. They dropped on, at the end of that, subsection D, that defines a deepfake. It defines what a deepfake is, but more importantly, what it is not. Because, like I said before, this was written and was passed in 2019, 6 years ago, before generative AI even existed. And so at the time, this was all encompassing and knocked out deepfakes and all of that. Except deepfake has changed in what it can be since then. This says it has to be a video. We know now there are all kinds of different deepfakes out there: photo manipulation, voice manipulation, putting you in a situation that never actually existed, like I was showing with the photos earlier. Those are all deepfakes, even if they're just photos. And so, it's not good enough. And I screamed. No, I didn't actually scream. I forcefully stated to the Capitol this session in public hearings, look, this is not good enough, and it's going to bite you all in the ass if you don't do something this session. Shocker, they didn't do anything this session. So this is where we stand currently. For all of you that are going to be running for office, that's what deepfake means, and that's the way that you're going to get somebody on a complaint if they do something that comes at you or whatever. It's got to fit that definition, or else it's not going to matter, which sucks, right? So that is a very tough spot to just say, all right, questions, but all right, questions. Do we want to walk around a mic? You want to? There's.
I'm just going to let you all know that Anat is going to be on at 11, and so we can only take like 2 questions.
Thank you. I'm Vicki Salen from Brazos County. Appreciate the presentation. I got a little distracted, Mr. Cates, in the discussion of the scandal. Well, I do like your seersucker too, but in the discussion of the scandal, so I missed whether that new proposal in 2024 it apparently didn't pass.
That was for you.
Yeah, the Texas Responsible AI Governance Act.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, it did pass. That
It
that
did
that,
pass.
that sandbox passed.
Okay.
But it's like I said, it didn't really, well, it didn't at all touch on elections or anything around candidates and campaign finance.
Thank you.
I just have a quick couple of questions. First of all, I'm intrigued by your presentation in that you are
Recording
primarily
in
viewing with
progress.
alarm, and that's an understandable thing. However, I've been involved with AI since Marvin Minsky was making his alleged trips to Epstein Island, and it's inevitable. I mean, this technology is coming. There is no turning it back now. Doesn't it make a great deal more sense to investigate ways of using AI to defend against these threats rather than to consider, rather than to even try to pass legislation against it? I mean, isn't that, to use the quotation of my dear old dad, isn't that shoveling shit against the tide?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's definitely here. It just, it just sucks that they created the disease and the cure, and then now they're trying to create the cure at the same time. It's like, here's ChatGPT, and here's AI that can stop you from being deceived by GPT, and here's another AI to make sure that one's good. I mean, like, it's just gonna suck every dime out of you, But there's, I mean, it's here.
We're working on it, to be honest. Like AI, it's weird to talk about using AI to defend against the AI threats. But yes, there's a considerable number of researchers and technologists that are trying to do that. I do think that there is the need for some legislation, but legislation, let's be honest, it's going to be slow and it's not necessarily going to help us right now when we need it right now. And it's doing a lot of damage. So yes, technology and do I need a? That's not mine. Technology and also grassroots involvement, I would say, because that is an underused resource when it comes to combating threats such as whatever affects the information ecosystem. Like that is an area where we can actually train AI and we can actually do something to shape that narrative and the information ecosystem instead of just being helpless. Uh, Apologies. I come from my belief is that sometimes we surrender a lot. Like we just say, "Oh, there's this bad thing happening," and we don't do absolutely everything in our power to do something about it. And this is something that we actually have the ability to do something about, with grassroots storytelling, for example. Most of the training data is open source. So let's get on Wikipedia, friends. Let's get on YouTube and Reddit and just we can flood the zone too,
Yeah. I think we can do one more, and then I don't know about Britt, but I can go back in the back, and y'all can come jump over and ask questions. I don't want to get
Perfect.
in.
I'm right here.
Yeah.
Really quickly, for deep and social, like narrative listening and all of that stuff that you were discussing, like obviously you have a firm that does that, and so you probably have an in-house model that like works like that. So for like the candidates here who only have access to public models or can only pay for that like public models, like what does that prompting look like, and how would you recommend they get more versed on that?
Ooh, that is an in-depth answer. I don't know if we've got time for it, but I would actually move away from okay, first and foremost, I wouldn't recommend using ChatGPT for any of this. I would recommend moving into things like Julius, for example, is an incredible. So I don't know if this answers your question directly, but I can give you some tools, like if that's what you're looking for. Julius, great for analysis and statistical analysis data. It's also more secure environments. It does use you can actually choose the models that it chooses from. Claude is actually really cool. I think I'm actually going to replace Julius with Claude, but I was telling him earlier that I have at least like 5 different programs open at any one given moment in time because yeah. But I use that to test, but also to diagnose like what's happening. But I also have my own secure environments. Um, I'm not trying to plug anything, but I have a real like passion for democratizing access to this kind of stuff because I know that like one person, one firm can't do this alone, and it takes literally everybody here to kind of be on their toes and also to help with this analysis or to understand like what is going on, and then to help to be the solution. Um, so I might have some updates on that for you soon. Back to tools though. Julius is great. Claude is great. Perplexity is amazing for research and media analysis and like breaking news in particular. Um, GPT-5 is actually really good. Again, I don't recommend everybody in here use it, especially for data or for like deep research. I know there's several that I'm leaving out. Lovable is great for coding and for building things. Prompt wise, I think moving away from like the single shot though, if at all possible, move towards like agentic AI. So building out models. Claude has a really great they have a really great interface for doing this, but move towards like more of like the bespoke programs like Lovable even to help to build out those processes. Because what happens when you do with the single shot is it kind of muddies the water and it has sort of like blinders on. But when you can basically replicate your processes in prompts, also with prompts, make sure that you're being very clear and direct and tell it exactly what you want. And that's also why we recommend using multimodal, is because it gives it specific guidance like you would a staff member, right? Otherwise, it gets rabbit holey and it can veer off into all sorts of weird directions, and then you get sucked into rabbit holes and you start arguing with it, and like that's a big waste of time. So be clear, be direct, and then move away from single shot into multimodal where you can use some of those like the buildable type programs. Does that help answer your question? Cool.
We'll be back over there if
Yeah.
you have any other questions. We want to get out of here.
So our next speaker is Anat Rosario, and she is online, and she's about to turn on her screen. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. But if you have more questions, they will be in the lobby. So both Andrew and Britt, and you all can ask them there. But we're gonna Anat Rosario is like really awesome. So let's listen to her panel. Give it about 1 minute, and I'm going to turn it on and put her on screen, and then I'm going to introduce her. So don't get too noisy, okay? Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you all. That was so great. Thank you.